Dear participants, I've already addressed you this morning, so I will not introduce the subject again. It's a great honor and a pleasure to welcome Minister Schäuble here to the college, to this conference. I think it is not necessary to introduce Minister Schäuble. His reputation, of course, is for a long time established as one of the key actors, not only in German politics, but also at the European and international level. I would, however, personally like to add just a few remarks. I think that you, Minister Schäuble, have never shied away from major challenges. You have negotiated the German reunification treaty, which is a historical monument for German history, but also its European implications, obviously. And also, having worked for quite a while on EU justice and home affairs issues, I remember well your very determined and courageous stand while Minister for Interior as regards equipping member states and also the European Union with the necessary tools to respond to the challenges of international terrorism. And then, since 2009, as a German finance minister, you have borne the core responsibility for the German budgetary context, a large responsibility also eventually for the survival of the Eurozone. One says that if one is finance minister, one can take any job in the world. And in any case, it's certainly also one of the portfolios which at times can be rather uncomfortable. Germany is the largest economy in Europe, the fourth largest economy in the world, and the second largest exporter globally. Being a German who has lived outside of Germany for 18 years, I say this with some pride as well, personally. These are impressive statistics, but this also means that the German economy unavoidably affects the rest of Europe. Germany has for a long time consistently advocated sound public finances as a means for recovery and growth. Finding the way back to growth is a key subject for today's conference. And one can also say that the requirement for sound public finances is, of course, enshrined in the EU's constitution, in the EU treaties. However, these are clearly very challenging times. Many economists have argued that at present we need more economic stimulus. And it is there where I think the debate starts and the consensus ends. I think we all agree on the objective that more growth is necessary. It's ultimately also a crucial question, as I said this morning, for the legitimacy of the European construction to offer a sign of hope, of a positive future to European citizens. But the question is how to get there. And here I would just like to repeat what President Monti said this morning. He said, it was probably, he said, right to actually not to act too fast with the rescue packages. But at the same time, he said that the slight slowing down of this process actually meant that there was a higher level of discontent and potentially a higher level of populist, so to say, fallout now in some of the southern member states. But he also said that if this would be the other way around, if the northern countries, and I think we referred to Germany as well, would have acted faster, we might probably have a bigger problem in Germany in domestic politics now. And therefore one can see the dynamics which at the national level also impact on this. But I think we are really very privileged today to have an opportunity to listen to your recipe, to your strategy, how to arrive at more growth in Europe, and to give this positive sign about the future of the European economic and political construction. Minister Schäuble, Sie haben das Wort.
Thank you, Professor Monar. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to be here. And I will immediately start in asking, what does it mean, European recovery? What do we really mean when we are saying recovery? I would like to mention three things. First, achieving sustainable goals. Second, reducing economic imbalances. And third, fighting unemployment. When it comes to fighting unemployment, we will only be successful in the long term if we understand that global markets continue to change while the crisis in Europe was occurring. This was, is and will be a result of globalization and digitalization. Competition with other parts of the world has become fiercer. And this has accelerated during the crisis. This also led to more competition on the labor markets. In more and more industries and service sectors, there is a global labor supply, with much lower wages and labor costs than in Europe. In addition, qualification levels and know-how are not that different from those in Europe. As a result, many of the jobs that have been lost in Europe cannot be brought back in their old form. For this reason, we need new, different jobs. We need a forward-looking recovery. Conventional government programs are not the answer. What we need are the right conditions that will generate innovations to strengthen our competitiveness. We need to invest in research and innovation to create the jobs we need. The specific European characteristics of the labor markets are not the only thing we need to consider when we think about recovery. There are other ways in which we are different from other parts of the world. Our strategy needs to take account of our continent's unique character. Our continent is indeed very different from other continents. It's more densely populated. It has fewer natural resources and energy reserves. It's experiencing difficult demographic changes. In Europe, we have a much higher need for security. Europe's social benefits are, in relation to GDP, significantly higher than in other large industrial nations. And when it comes to new technologies, in particular, we don't have a big appetite for risk. If we Europeans want to stay this way, and yet want to remain at the top of the world's pyramid of prosperity, then we can only do this by working together, by creating the right incentives, so that our countries and Europe as a whole continue to work on improvements. By the way, some people are saying we want a German Europe. That's nonsense. What we only want is a strong Europe, but that's enough, difficult enough. And we can only do this if we keep the European model efficient and sustainable, if we are competitive and if our political system is robust. That's the problem in Italy, by the way, if you listen carefully to Mario Monti. And he would know it very well. We Europeans are different, and therefore we cannot copy solutions from elsewhere. We have to find our own answers. We have to find the road that is right for us, and if it is more difficult than other roads. In particular, we Europeans have to prove that we are reliable. We have to show that we have the will to implement the necessary reforms. We have to show that we are capable of permanently stabilizing the situation. Around the world, people are watching very carefully to see if Europe is able to stay on course. It's not just about fixing the crisis. It's a kind of political and economic stress test for Europe. Are we strong enough to follow this difficult path of self-improvement? The world is watching to see if we will stick to all the agreements that we have made. We have a lot of agreements, but the implementation is sometimes lacking. For the sake of our unique characteristics, Europe must always be a bit better, a bit more stable, and a bit more attractive than other regions of the world. This will only be successful if we continue to move towards taking decisions at the European level. In recent years, we have begun to understand that. The rules for sound fiscal and economic policies in Europe are now more binding than they were in the past. The coordination of national fiscal and budgetary policies has been improved. The reform requirements are more targeted. Monitoring is stricter, and sanctions are smarter. We have enshrined debt breaks in national constitutions, and we have created a permanent crisis management mechanism which gives us time to carry out reforms and reduces the risk of contagion to other countries. And this has created good conditions for recovery. The last 4 years marked the start of the process to put Europe on a more solid foundation. Our policy of helping others to help themselves is showing results. In economic terms, Europe is no longer the world's main cause for concern. The government deficit in the euro area has been cut by half in recent years. Ireland and Spain have successfully completed their assistance programs. Portugal is making progress and will do the same in the middle of this year. Investors are regaining trust once again. Risk premiums on sovereign bonds have declined sharply. Our European strategy is beginning to create sustainable growth in the Eurozone. By the way, Germany's exports also create growth in Europe. To achieve high export levels, we need to import primarily products, and this contributes to growth and employment in Europe and far beyond. As a matter of fact, German current account surpluses with other euro areas countries have declined substantially. Thanks to strong employment and robust wage developments, we expect current account surpluses to fall further. Claims that domestic demand is weak in Germany and that there is not enough investment are no longer true. Private consumption is now one of the central pillars of growth in the German economy. Private investment in fixed assets has recently increased, contributing to growth. In 2013, German local authorities increased their gross investment by 12% compared with the previous year. And the Federation is increasing its investment. We are allocating an extra 5 billion euros to transport infrastructure. Education is getting an additional 6 billion euros in total up to 2017. And we are spending an additional 3 billion euros on research up to 2017. Germany is among the countries at the top of the European rankings when it comes to spending on research and development. All of this boosts growth in Germany and in Europe. Together, we Europeans have found the right way out of the crisis, but the crisis isn't over yet. We haven't solved all the problems we face. High unemployment in some European countries, especially among young people, is the clearest reason why we shouldn't be satisfied with the progress we have achieved so far. We have to press on and continue with the initiatives we have already started, such as improving conditions for small and medium-sized enterprises. For many people, these kinds of companies represent the best chance of quickly returning to the world of work. For this reason, we have provided the European Investment Bank with the necessary capacity to take more intensive action in this area. In addition, Germany is offering bilateral support. We are helping Portugal to create a development bank. We have offered Greece assistance with a development fund that is currently being created. We are helping Spain with a universal loan to the tune of 800 million euros from our German development bank to support Spanish companies, especially small and medium-sized ones. We are also providing advice to our Spanish counterparts on how to introduce a vocational training model based on our dual system in Germany. It's crucial that we stay on course. Every new step that we take must serve the goal of achieving greater competitiveness and sustainable growth. We need to invest in research and development. For example, we need to intensify our efforts to build a European energy market. By the way, It's the biggest economic problem in Germany in the short term, the energy policy to fulfill the energy change. Any mutualization of liability would actually weaken competitiveness, whether we are talking about Eurobonds or collective liability for banks' legacy assets. It would create the wrong incentives and gives the impression that state support is guaranteed in every case. Monetary policy cannot take the place of reforms. It can't fix Europe's biggest problem, which is its lack of competitiveness. If the limits on the ECB's mandate didn't already exist, we would have to invent them. Otherwise, we Europeans might drag our feet on reforms or neglect them completely. That's what, by the way, the Board of Economic Advisors to the Federal Government stressed in its last report at the end of last year, that we have to avoid wrong incentives by monetary policy, which would be misunderstood, not to take the needed structural decisions. That is the danger. Of course, cutting red tape could also free up energy that Europe needs. The negotiations of the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership offer an opportunity to look at bureaucracy and regulation in Europe and think carefully about whether all of it is really needed or whether some of it might be slowing progress. You may remember that BASF, the world's largest chemical company, gave up its European research and production activities in the field of green genetic engineering in 2012 due to sustained political resistance due to European regulation, and transferred all these activities to the US. It's a symbol for me that we have to think about whether our bureaucratic framework, regulation framework, is damaging the expectation and the chances for sustainable growth. Concerning the transatlantic partnership, let me say briefly that I am confident that the Ukraine crisis will help to strengthen transatlantic ties and to rediscover our common interest. There are more such shared interests than many believed in recent years. To achieve sustainable growth, we also need to press ahead with the regulation on the financial markets. We want to reduce risks to the system and eliminate false incentives in the future. In recent years, we have made the financial markets more stable, step by step. Stricter capital requirements, resolution regimes and living wills for banks, sustainable compensation rules, improved supervision and more transparency, all these things make the Players Act more sustainably and help to build up trust once again, also among market participants. But our work is not yet done. In the G20, we are working on the regulation of the international shadow banking sector. We are negotiating the design of a European system that separates banking activities, and we are negotiating the gradual introduction of a financial transaction tax by 11 member states. The banking union is beginning this year in the form of a joint banking supervisor, followed by common resolution rules and a single resolution mechanism with a clear bail-in pecking order. Following the regulatory progress of recent years and following the ECB's stress test, we will begin the banking union this year with healthier banks that will be better able to provide credit to small and medium-sized companies. And in the event that a bank gets into trouble, taxpayers' money will be better protected than in the past. But even if we stick to our path with determination, that will still not be enough. To achieve a strong Europe, which is what we all want, we will need a better legal basis in the long term. The Lisbon Treaty only reflects the European reality of 2014 to a limited extent. We have significantly deepened European integration in recent years, but not always using the community method which is the approach that I would always prefer in principle. To remain capable of action during the crisis, we had to find intergovernmental solutions for some things. For example, as a part of the banking union, we had to choose an intergovernmental construction for the creation of a European Banking Resolution Fund, which will be financed by contributions from banks. Under the current treaties, the European Union is not allowed to collect European banking levies. In the medium term, we have to put this and similar cases on a better footing in terms of the treaties. This will improve Europeans' ability to implement what we have agreed together. Our intergovernmental approach is only second best, but it's better than nothing. But in the long term, second best is not enough for Europe. For example, I can imagine there being a Eurozone Parliament. Last May, France and Germany suggested that the European Parliament should be involved more effectively in Eurozone decisions. I also think it would be possible for us to use the EU budget as an instrument for setting priorities in individual member states. We could support the European Commission's country-specific recommendations through a targeted use of resources. In this way, we could fight problems in individual countries and support structural reforms. Responsibilities need to be more clearly divided among the European levels. As many competences as possible need to remain decentralized and in the hands of local authorities, regions and member states. But those things can only be decided on the European level, need to be decided by European institutions. For example, I could imagine having a European budget commissioner who would be able to reject national budgets if they don't correspond to the rules that we have jointly agreed. In the competition rules, the state aid rules, we have such an institution. Why not in the budget control? These are discussions that we need to have now in order to get Europe into good shape for the long term and to create conditions for sustainable growth. Hard work is necessary, and it will continue to be necessary. But we also know that Europe remains one of the world's most attractive regions. A 2012 study by the European Union Institute for Security Studies shows that the EU members are considered to have the largest amount of soft power in the world. You can also be proud not only to be German, but to be a European. This is because of Europe's attractive culture, its well-educated populations, vibrant civil societies, an open and democratic political culture, the social market economy, internationally successful companies, a model of government that successfully combines national sovereignty with pluralism and a diverse range of decentralized relationships. Not to mention our experience with integration, our multilateral cooperation, and our value-based foreign policy. All these things are seen as a part of Europe's soft power and as a part of the European model. And if we Europeans prove that our model will remain politically and economically successful in the future, there's a competition as well in this regard, then, and only then, other parts of the world will be willing to look to it as a model of their own future success. Therefore, we Europeans must do our best to live up to this responsibility, and that's in our own interest. Thank you very much.
Minister Schäuble, we can't thank you enough for your speech, which has not only given concrete indications what is necessary for stimulating growth in a sustainable way, but also in the end for adding a strong visionary note for the future development also of the European Union. I was also, of course, representing the college in a sense, very happy that you put a lot of emphasis on the importance to invest in education and research and development. This is very close, of course, to our heart here at the college in general, but certainly one of the ingredients of longer-term growth. And also, I think you gave a very clear message about not providing false monetary policy incentives in the context of the current situation. I also found it very much food for thought for us here at the college when we spoke about the EU budgetary commissioner who might have the power to reject national budgets. That's a very courageous proposal again, and also close to the debate which we have here at the college, also amongst our students. So thanks very much for providing us with so much food for thought and also a positive message about how we can get out of the current difficult situation. You have accepted to take questions. The floor is open. Yes, please, or you were the first. If you could say your name, also nationality perhaps.
Yes. Hello, I'm Jörg Petersen. I'm from Stuttgart in Germany. Thank you very much for the talk and for the presentation. I have one question which is maybe a bit more like German, maybe, in a way, but maybe also important for the rest of the continent. You are often described as the last real European in the cabinet of Merkel, and the last one who's really interested in European integration and has some kind of emotional attachment to European integration. And I was wondering, what do you think about the rise of the AfD and the upcoming European elections for the European Parliament? And the AfD is a right-wing party, you could say, which is very Eurosceptical. And I was just wondering, what is your opinion on what we should do about the AfD, what the parties could do to counter the rise of the AfD? Thank you very much.
I would, if you may, I would like. I would prefer to react immediately. I am not the only one remaining, or maybe a romantic pro-European in Germany. That has been said some years ago. But what I mentioned, I did it as member of my government, and I'm always very carefully not to be seen as someone who is not in line with the general policy. Even as you have said, the courageous proposal for the commissioner, the right of the commission to reject a national budget is a position which has been mentioned by Federal Chancellor as well. This is the policy of our German government. And when we had this discussion in my party some years ago, in the first years of the Euro crisis, there have been some movements that way. Then we discussed it on a party convention 2 years ago. And the outcome of this party convention was a European program, which was very, very courageous and very well and even President Barroso was very pleased. We even agreed in my party convention that in the future we should switch to the direct election of the President of the European Commission, which would create a revolution in Europe, but it would make Europe much more welcome. Therefore, okay, now we have maybe not in the same dimension than other European member states. We have a political movement which reflects on some Eurosceptic feeling in populations. This Eurosceptic feeling is in all European societies, and it's quite understandable. There's a lot of reasons for this. Maybe by far the most reason is that people don't like changes. They are always in favor of claiming for changes, but if a change or reform is becoming concrete, because we live in, as long as we live in a relative well-founded situation, we don't like too much changes. And Europe, of course, is a huge challenge. In Germany, there is a broader consensus than in European integration on behalf. That is some kind of the legacy of our history in last century, of course, because if you know the German history after World War II, without European integration, without Atlantic alliance, there would be no Germany. The second chance for Germany, to quote the famous American historian Stern, the second chance for Germany is related on European integration. Therefore, we are in a similar situation than some other members, creating member states of the European integration, especially Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands, in some way Italy, and in some way also France. It's not by accident that these 6 member states are the founding member states of European integration. Having said this, okay, in the last general election, the so-called AfD, I don't like the name because it's not an alternative for Germany. It's only the name, it's not the real alternative. But the so-called AfD got 4.8%. It's less. It's less than. If you look at Front National last Sunday in France, if you look at UKIP in UK in last local elections, or maybe we will see what will be the outcome in European elections. If you look at Netherlands, Finland, Austria, so, and what's going on in Italy. Having said this, even as always, now this party is trying to collect whatever you may collect. In saying, oh, we want to return to the values of the Christian religion, and we have strong conservative. On the same way, they are defending. They had party convention last weekend. They are very well explaining why Putin has right and the Western Alliance is not. It's an old tradition in some kind of German conservatism that we have a little bit some skepticism against the Western fly of democracy. And something else in Israel. Maybe we will see what will happen. Our constitutional court has made a decision that for the European elections, I think this decision is. I do not agree with this decision, but I have to respect it. That we only need 3% to get access to parliament, because our constitutional court is very skeptical. Seems to have the thinking that a democratic law for election is only if it's strict proportionality. By the way, it's not the way in which Western democracies make their legal systems. They have majorities systems in UK, in some way in France, with two terms, in United States, and I have not the conviction that Germany has invented Western democracy. And therefore, I'm a little bit skeptic if our constitutional court is saying the only way for a democratic legal system is the strict proportionality. By the way, we made very bad experience in times after World War I, before the Nazis. Yes, a lot of people have said that was one of the reasons why the Nazis became so successful. Having said this, we will fight them. We will, in a democratic competition, we will fight them. This party will may get they will get some members of European Parliament, but not many. I'm quite optimistic. We will be successfully convincing that we are on the right way. But by the way, that's the risk of democracy. If you will not be able to convince other people, you have to accept it. But we are fighting for this, and I strongly ask young generation to take the responsibilities of young generation for democracy serious. I don't like to see in Europe, in Germany, I can see the participation in the young generation in democratic elections is not very impressive. You should not stick to this way. because of course I know as long as something is granted, it's not really worthy. As soon as it's at stake, you will understand that it's very worthy. Therefore, I would defend it and I would engage myself for democracy in time and not only if it is late. Once again, I am quite optimistic that the Eurosceptic in Germany will not be very strong, even in European elections. And we are decided, we have a broad consensus, except, by the way, the left-wing party in Germany. But that's what we have even seen in times after World War I. So extremists from the left and the right, at the end, they are very close.
Minister, Alex Barker from the Financial Times. Even as a romantic pro-European, whenever you speak about treaty change, the hearts of Eurosceptics in Britain soar and get very excited about the prospect of this triggering a wider renegotiation. With that in mind, how soon do you want to see these changes to the treaties, and what message would you give to British Eurosceptics that think that provides an opportunity for them to renegotiate this more broadly?
Maybe you will join me. I am just leaving Brugge to Cambridge, and I will convince the rest of the British. I think the British are, at the end, always reasonable people. Therefore, they know that in the best interest for Europe, of course, that UK will remain a reliable member of the European Union, but it's also in the best interest of UK. Therefore, I'm quite confident. Having said this, we may combine, even in treaty changes, the necessity, at least for the Eurozone, for some treaty change, because the governance of the Eurozone must be increased, enhanced. With this government, we have successfully fighting the Euro crisis the last 4 years, but we have been more successful than everyone expected. But I will not, I would like to have better governance for the Eurozone for the coming years, because I can tell you, it's sometimes very difficult. If, as long as UK will not join the Eurozone, say, maybe we can find a two-speed solution for the interim time. That is not, it's a final vision from Europe is an integration of the equal level for all. But to go on, we have always have some diversity and some flexibility. We have Schengen, we have the Eurozone, and that's the way in which the European integration went forward over 60 years. And in this way we can find even a common solution. I would be ready to find a common proposal together with my colleague George Osborne in this remark. And of course we have then to solve the problem that member states which are not today member of the Eurozone, but which want to join the Eurozone soon, the bridge between both has to be considered, and we need solutions for this, but it's doable as well. So you will see, I will be very successful.
I'm tried like this. Daniel Boller from Germany, living in Brussels since quite a while and working there. I found your remarks quite remarkable, actually, and interesting about the idea of a commissioner, of the commissioner for the budget and the opportunity to reject the national budget, specifically coming from you as finance minister. And following up on Alex's question as well, are there specific plans you have in mind and ideas? Do you see a specific time frame when you might come up with treaty changes with regards to the IGA and what you just mentioned? And secondly, at the same time, we have that problem of extremists, and certainly AfD is less of a problem compared to perhaps other parties which you mentioned. and we still will see 15 to 20% of what we can call extremist parties in the European Parliament. So I'm wondering, on the one hand, your idea of coming up with these treaty changes, and on the other hand, how do we see the chances in this new political landscape to bring these ideas across successfully?
I'm always an optimist, and I think you have to look and we have to discuss what is the right way. And if we are convinced that we have to fight to convince others. It's the way of democracy. And I think we have good arguments, therefore I'm optimistic that we get again. Treaty changes, the enhancing of the governance of the Eurozone as soon as possible. Better today than tomorrow. But I think not before European elections, if I'm realistic. But it may happen. Maybe we will move sometimes. Europe has always moved European integration in times of crisis. Therefore, I always like to make some things like jokes, but there is some substance in the meaning. Maybe in some years we will deliver the pre-shelled money for merits in European integration to Vladimir Putin, because the crisis of the will make the Europeans aware that Eurosceptic is not the right way. Eurosceptic is not the right way. We have to work for this. We have to convince, and I think we can get majorities for this, and in democracy, the majority decides. Therefore, my conviction is, and I have made this proposal since decades. In former times, it was difficult to convince the leader of my party to elect in a direct election the president of the Commission, because, of course, heads of states and governments don't like understandable reasons. My argument to convince Angela Merkel was, I don't think that it will happen in your time. She agreed. But when she decided what to run again, she was a little bit more skeptical. As you could read in the magazine, to speak. But nevertheless, we have discussed, and she is convinced that it is the right way. And by the way, the right for the commissioner or the commission to reject a national budget. I have always been asked, it offends the budget sovereignty of member states. It's nonsense. To stick to the rules that we have agreed is not a violation of budget. Therefore, the right for the member of the Commission, Almunia, to object if there is a violation of competition rules, it's not a violation of national sovereignty. So far we have moved the national sovereignty partly to the European level, and we have agreed that all national budgets have to stick to some rules. I am only specific if I would be specific, I'm only specific in taking these rules we have agreed as given, and to try to stick to the rules. That is, for some people, a little bit surprising. Not for me. That is one of the major problems. That we have a lot of creativity in finding rules and agreements. But as soon as we have agreed on an agreement, we forget what we have agreed. And the implementation is like that. Therefore, I am so strong, sometimes boring, in fighting against wrong incentives. That we are all bound to stick to what we have agreed. Not more, never more. But this could be. Otherwise, we will never gain trust. Oh dear, I have to convince some British people in the rest of this afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Antonio from Portugal. I'd like to ask you a question about that issue of the commissioner who would have the power to reject national budgets. Considering, okay, the traditional argument that budgets are usually are decided by directly elected legislatures, would you think that it would be more respectful of that core principles of Western democracy to be for that rejection to happen through the European Parliament instead of an indirectly elected commissioner?
I think to the implementation of rules is never to a parliament. We have a division of powers in all democracy between executive and legislative and jurisdictions. And the implementation is never a matter of legislation, and therefore it's not to parliaments. That is the right way for a commissioner, maybe more democratically elected than the given commission, that's okay. But even this is not a violation of it, because the rules have been agreed by governments and by the European institutions with the support and the legitimization by the national parliaments. Therefore, there is no rule which is not being agreed in a democratic way, and therefore, and to implement the rules and to stick to the rules is not a matter of legislation, it is only a matter of implementation.
Thank you very much, David Dureiko, Economic Department. I want to get back to the first sentence you said. You defined European recovery as getting back on track of sustainable growth and fighting imbalances and unemployment. Do you think that mini jobs as a way to fight unemployment in Germany and current account imbalances and relying on growth is a sustainable growth? And is it a prescription also for different countries?
I have not the opinion that everything in Germany is fine and better than the rest of the world. That's never my conviction. By the way, mini jobs. I will not try to explain to this audience that there's a huge misunderstanding of it. Most of mini jobs are jobs for people which have another job and who don't want to have a full job, or have a full job and have an additional mini job. Students and all this thing. If you look at the real figures, that's not one of our core problems. By the way, the number of fully occupied people in Germany is higher than it has ever been in history. And unemployment is the lowest figure since German reunification. Therefore, and it's not by mini jobs, regular jobs, the highest figure we ever had in history. We will still increase. Surpluses I have already mentioned. I think we stick to the rules that, of course, as soon as you have 3 following years more than 6% trade surplus, there have to be an inquiry whether it's unfair or not. And therefore I have full of respect that the European Commission is looking at this. But we are still reducing our surpluses. We have no substantial surplus in the Eurozone. Our contribution to the fact that the Eurozone itself has a balanced trade balance in relation to the rest of the world. Without the German surpluses we would have a deficit from the Eurozone as well. Therefore, and we are reducing it because actually we are in 2 ways criticized by European Commission. The one is surplus. The other is that we, in our coalition treaty, we spend too much for social increasing social security. And sometimes I like to ask the well-beloved Olli Rehn, the commissioner, to say, Olli, what shall I do? Spending more or spending less money? What is the right way? Because you can't criticize both at the same time. It's a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, you.
I'm Pascal Carrez of the European Services Forum, which is a lobby industry defending trade. You mentioned twice in your presentation the TTIP trade, transatlantic trade and investment partnership with the United States. Yesterday, President Obama was here for the summit with Barroso and Van Rompuy, and this is raising a lot of hope, a lot of expectations, but it is going to be very tough to deliver. And you're talking that we should not give too much strong incentive if it is not going to deliver. So my question is, do you think TTIP will ever deliver on the European side and on the American side of the US Congress? Very tough on this one.
No, I'm very, maybe I was to be misunderstood. I am very in favor of TTIP. And my hope is that we Europeans, especially we Germans by the way, understand that to get TTIP, we cannot stick to any regulation we have created in Europe. Because otherwise we will never get a transatlantic free trade agreement. That is quite understandable. Therefore, I try to say the negotiation on this very useful transatlantic free trade agreement may be a chance for us to think about what is really needed, protection of food, and look at the discussion on what is the English word? GMO. It's protection of environment, to protect everything. I can tell you a lot of in the experience of the daily life. You sometimes it's only you think it's a joke, but it's a reality, and that's not in the interest of free trade. If we will ask for any European standard, and without this we will never agree on free trade with US. We will not get it. Therefore, it's a chance for us, for Europe, to think about whether we can reduce a little bit some nonsense. By the way, even in data protection, we have to start a new thinking and a new discussion, a broad discussion in our Western societies, in Europe and in the United States of America. By the way, the United States of America are as much democracies as Europe, maybe even more. A new discussion, the relation and the influence and the outcome of the new technologies for human rights, for privacy, for all these fundamental rights. It is very, very difficult and challenging. It's not a matter of intelligence services. You don't, I think it's crazy. Maybe we would agree that any company is allowed to do whatever it is, and the free to be data has to be free and net has to be not regulated anyway. When I, as Minister of Interior, try to block a little bit the abuse of children for pornography, I was strongly criticized in blocking the freedom in the net. If you think that everyone is allowed to know everything, except the services, intelligence services, we must not spend 1 cent for intelligence services, by the way. It's not. And sorry, one last question, because you have a schedule and I have a schedule as well.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your inspiring and energetic speech. My question is on another type of energy. Actually, you mentioned that it's one of the biggest challenges for Germany, the energy sector. I was wondering, given also your vision of more Europe and stronger Europe and advancing in European project in time of crisis, what is your vision and perspective on the energy balancing, security of supply and climate in light of the crisis? Thank you.
Since I have courageously said that I'm speaking on behalf of the German government, I have to restrict myself a little bit because I'm not the responsible member of government for energy policy. Therefore, it's my personal view on this, but we have not major difference in this. Yes, of course. Look, the problem is, in some regards, the Germans are even more pro-European or Europeans than any other European. Especially in the dimension I have mentioned and quoted in the beginning, the risk aversity. Europe as a whole is, compared with other parts of the world, risk averse. But in Europe, Germany is number 1 in risk aversity, by far. And in the use of nuclear energy, it's Having said this government, after the general election of 2009, negotiated to prolong the use of nuclear plants. And then Fukushima happened. And then it was without any chance. It was hopeless for decades that you would ever get a significant minority in Germany, in German sovereign, for the ongoing use of nuclear energy. Therefore, we decided the energy change. We did it too successfully in the last couple of years. Therefore, the prices for energy has risen in a dangerous dimension. Therefore, we have to balance this, to manage. And of course, it would be much better to, what is the Commissioner Oettinger saying again and again, we need urgently a European energy market. But of course, then we cannot limit in Germany support for renewable energy, solar energy and wind only for German producers. Then we have to, and then we will have competition. And in the competition of solar energy, for example, Germany is not the most competitive member of Europe because we have not as much sunshine as, for example, Greece, Italy, Spain. Why not? Why not? I think therefore we agree that we can use the European energy market. Of course, that will request that anyone is ready to move a little bit on common rules, which is difficult. Of course, the situation is very difficult. France, electricity in France is by 80% from nuclear energy. Therefore, for France, it's much a different situation compared with Germany. I don't know the situation in Belgium. But we have to work in this direction because we can solve the energy problem much better than we already have achieved. And by the way, once again, Vladimir Putin is telling us we have to reduce the situation that some of European member states are dependent from Russian oil and gas. Much more. Some of European Union member states depend actually by 100%. Germany is not in the most dependent. We would survive, but Europe as a whole has a problem in the short term, not in the medium term. In the medium term, Russia has much more at stake than Europe. But in the short term, it's a little bit different. We have to convince everyone that in the medium term we all have. It's much better to have a partnership, to work together, but of course on the basis of international rules, and that is the way we have to achieve. I think we are in this new government with the new Minister for Economy and Energy, the Vice Chancellor, the leader of the Social Democratic Party. He is very decided to correct our energy policy in such a way. And therefore, I'm quite optimistic that we will get major progress in the coming years in this period of our new government. I'm sorry, I have invited this journalist from the FT to join me to convince the British Conservative Party on European integration, and therefore I have to leave. Thanks also for you responding to all the questions and also for the very positive, optimistic message about the future of Europe. We all have to work. But I think for many months this is the most optimistic message about the future of Europe we have heard here at the college. So thanks very much for this as well. And you've given us quite a lot to think about. Minister, thank you.